everyone, welcome back to Cozy English. I'm Jennifer, broadcasting from Thunder Bay, where we've got some gorgeous snow falling today. It's like a winter wonderland out my window, honestly so pretty I keep getting distracted just watching it come down.
And I'm Eric from Newmarket. We've got that same snow system coming through here too, supposed to get about 10 centimeters by tonight. I've got my hot chocolate ready with extra marshmallows and I'm feeling super cozy. Perfect day to stay inside and have a great conversation.
Perfect podcast weather, right? Nothing better than being warm inside when it's snowy outside. So, Eric, today's topic is something I'm really excited about. We're talking about learning English, specifically the different ways people do it now versus how they used to do it back in the day.
Yeah, like the old school methods our parents or grandparents might have used compared to these new AI tools everyone's been talking about lately. I think this is going to be super helpful for our listeners, especially if you're around that intermediate level where you're comfortable with the basics, but you're looking to keep improving and sound more natural.
Exactly. If that's you, if you're at that stage where you can hold a decent conversation, but want to get more fluent and confident, this episode is totally made for you. We've got lots of practical stuff to share.
So Jen, before we jump into the main stuff, I gotta tell you what happened to me at the coffee shop yesterday morning. So I was waiting for my latte at Tim Hortons. You know how it gets during the morning rush, and this guy standing next to me was just having a full-on conversation with his phone.
Like a video call with someone or a regular phone call?
No, that's the thing. He was practicing Spanish with ChatGPT, like out loud, right there in the coffee shop. He'd say something in Spanish, wait for the AI to respond through his earbuds, then respond back. It was basically like he was talking to a friend, except the friend was an app on his phone.
That's wild and honestly kind of brilliant when you think about it. Like, he's making use of that waiting time productively. When I was learning French in high school, we had to wait for like one field trip to Montreal to actually talk to anyone who spoke French as their first language.
Right? And then you'd be so nervous when you finally got there that you'd forget absolutely everything you learned in class. I remember my French oral exam back in the day. Total disaster. Honestly, one of the most embarrassing moments of my school years.
Oh no, what happened? You gotta tell me.
So the teacher asked me to describe my family in French, which we'd practiced like 100 times, and I just blanked. Completely forgot everything. Couldn't even remember the word for sister. I ended up calling her my girl brother. My teacher just stared at me like I had two heads.
Stop. That's hilarious though. I'm sorry. But it really shows how much pressure there was in traditional language learning. You know, you always felt like you were being tested and judged every single time you opened your mouth.
So much pressure. It was intense. And you know what's funny? I still remember some French from high school, but mostly the stuff I picked up outside of class. Song lyrics from French Canadian artists, stuff from movies I watched with subtitles, random phrases I heard during hockey games. Not really the textbook stuff.
Which tells you something about how we actually learn languages, doesn't it? Like real, natural exposure versus just memorizing grammar rules from a book?
It really does. So let's talk about that. What would you say are the classic traditional ways people have learned English over the years? Like if we were making a list.
Well, the big one is classroom learning, right? Teacher at the front of the room, textbook on your desk, grammar drills, maybe some partner exercises where you practice scripted dialogues that nobody actually uses in real life.
The classic setup that pretty much everyone's experienced. And honestly, it works for a lot of people. Having that structure, knowing exactly what you're supposed to learn each week, having a teacher who can answer your questions right away when you're confused.
Yeah, and a good teacher makes such a huge difference. Someone who can tell when you're struggling with something, who explains things in different ways until something finally clicks. My aunt was an ESL teacher for like 20 years here in Ontario, and she always talked about how rewarding it was when a student finally had that light bulb moment.
Clicks is a good expression, actually. For our listeners, when something clicks, it means you suddenly understand it after being confused. Everything just makes sense all of a sudden, like a switch flipped in your brain.
Oh, good catch. Yeah, like I kept trying to understand the difference between will and going to for future tense, and then one day it just clicked, and now I don't even have to think about it.
What's the downside of classroom learning, though? Because there's definitely some issues with it.
Well, everyone moves at the same pace, which can be really frustrating. So, if you already get the hang of something quickly, you're sitting there kind of bored and zoning out while the rest of the class catches up. But if you're the one struggling with the concept, the class moves on anyway, and you're left feeling lost.
Get the hang of is another good expression. That means to understand how to do something after you've practiced it for a while and it becomes natural.
We're just dropping useful phrases everywhere today, aren't we? That's kind of the whole point of this podcast, though.
What about language exchange? That's been around forever as an option.
Language exchange is awesome in theory. You find someone who speaks the language you want to learn, you help each other out. So they help you with your English, you help them with their Spanish or Mandarin or whatever language they're trying to improve.
In theory, that sounds great. In practice, though,
In practice, it can be pretty awkward. You gotta find someone first, which isn't always easy depending on where you live. Like finding a native Korean speaker in Thunder Bay isn't super simple. Then you gotta coordinate schedules, which is a whole thing when you're both busy with work and life. And sometimes the conversation just doesn't flow. You run out of stuff to talk about and it gets uncomfortable.
and there's that pressure again that we talked about. You don't want to make mistakes in front of an actual person who's judging your every word, especially when they're being really nice and helpful. You feel bad messing up.
Which is ridiculous because making mistakes is literally how you learn anything new. Your brain needs those mistakes to figure out the right patterns. But try telling that to your brain when you're face to face with someone watching you struggle. I went to Mexico City last year for vacation, and I was so nervous trying to speak Spanish that I just pointed at menu items instead of actually ordering properly like an adult.
I know that feeling way too well. It's like your brain just freezes up. Self-study is another traditional method, right?
Yeah, textbooks, audio courses, flashcard apps like Anki, all that stuff. Which is great if you're super disciplined and self motivated, but it's also really easy to buy a bunch of books and apps with tons of motivation, get through chapter 1 feeling really good about yourself, and then let them collect digital dust forever.
I feel personally attacked right now. I have so many language learning books and apps I've never finished. There's a Spanish course, a Japanese one, like 2 German programs, all abandoned somewhere around lesson 4 or 5.
Same here, honestly. But the good thing about self study is you go at your own pace completely. Nobody's waiting for you, nobody's watching you mess up or judging your progress. The bad thing is there's nobody to answer your questions either when you get stuck on something confusing.
And the feedback problem is huge. If you say something wrong or pronounce something weird, how do you even know? You could be practicing something incorrectly for months without anyone telling you that you're doing it wrong.
Exactly. You might be reinforcing bad habits instead of learning the right way, and then those habits become really hard to break later when someone finally corrects you.
Which brings us to why these AI tools have become such a big deal lately, right? They kind of address some of these issues.
It really does. Because AI, specifically these large language models like ChatGPT and Claude, they kind of solve some of these problems that we've been talking about. Not all of them for sure, but a lot of the big ones.
So let's dive into that topic. What can you actually do with an AI chatbot for language learning? Walk me through it like I've never tried one before and have no idea where to start.
Dive into is a good expression too. It means to start exploring something with enthusiasm and energy. Okay, so the biggest thing for me personally is conversation practice. You can literally just chat with the AI about anything at all. Type to it or with some apps, actually talk to it out loud with your voice.
And there's zero judgment, right? The AI isn't going to think you're dumb for making mistakes. It's not going to sigh or look annoyed or check its watch impatiently.
Infinitely patient is the key phrase here. I read someone describing Claude as infinitely patient, never makes them feel bad about their language skills, always supportive and encouraging. And that's huge for learning effectively. That psychological safety really matters.
Because when you're stressed out and anxious, your brain basically shuts down the parts that help you learn. You can't absorb new information when you're in panic mode or worried about being judged. You need to be relaxed to actually learn properly.
Exactly right. And you can ask the AI to correct your mistakes as you go. Like right at the start of the conversation, you can say, please correct any errors I make and explain why they're wrong so I can learn from them. And it'll actually do that consistently throughout your whole conversation.
That would have been a total game changer for me learning French back in school. Having something that could tell me, hey, you need the subjunctive tense here because you're expressing doubt or uncertainty, and actually explain the reasoning in a way that made sense to my brain.
And it gives examples, puts words in context properly. If you ask, how do I use the word actually in a sentence? It won't just give you a boring dictionary definition. It'll show you the word used in like 5 or 6 different ways with real examples from everyday conversation.
Which is so much better than a dictionary, right? Dictionaries tell you what a word means in an abstract kind of way, but not really how to use it naturally in real conversation with real people.
Right. And the AI can explain the nuance, which is so valuable. Like, actually can mean in fact, but it can also be used to politely disagree with someone or to show surprise at something unexpected. A dictionary probably wouldn't make all those different uses and contexts clear.
Can you give some concrete examples of that, like how actually works in different situations in real life?
Sure thing. So you could say, I actually enjoyed that movie, meaning surprisingly, you enjoyed it when you didn't expect to at all. Or actually, I think you might be wrong about that, which is a polite, softer way of disagreeing with someone without being too confrontational. Same word, totally different vibes and meanings depending on context.
That's super useful for learners to understand. Those subtleties and nuances take forever to learn on your own just through exposure.
What about the personalization aspect? I keep hearing that's a big advantage of these AI tools over traditional methods.
It's massive, honestly. The AI adapts to your level automatically without you having to tell it. If you're a beginner, it uses simpler words and shorter sentences. If you're more advanced, it can get more complex and throw in idioms and phrasal verbs.
And it kind of remembers what you've talked about during a conversation. So if you mention you're really into hockey or cooking or video games, it can bring that up, use examples related to your interests, make the whole thing more relevant to you personally rather than generic textbook topics.
Which makes learning feel meaningful and engaging instead of boring and generic. No more describe your daily routine exercises for the 100th time that nobody cares about.
God, the daily routine chapter. Every single textbook ever made has it. I wake up at 7, I eat breakfast with my family, I go to school. So boring I could fall asleep just thinking about it.
With AI, you can just talk about stuff you actually care about and find interesting. Like the new show you're binging on Netflix, your weekend plans, whatever's on your mind. I was chatting to Claude about the Maple Leafs playoff chances the other day, and it was actually fun while still being educational.
What about role playing specific situations? I've heard you can practice scenarios that matter to you.
Yes, if you're nervous about a job interview in English, you can have the AI pretend to be the interviewer. It asks you tough questions about your experience and qualifications, gives you feedback on your answers, helps you prepare for the real thing so you're not caught off guard.
That's genuinely useful in the real world. Real practice for real situations that actually make people anxious and stressed out.
Or ordering at a restaurant in a foreign country, asking for directions when you're lost, making small talk at a party where you don't know anyone. You can run through the whole scenario multiple times and feel way more confident when you actually have to do it for real.
I did that before my Mexico City trip, actually. Should have done more of it, clearly given the menu pointing incident I mentioned earlier. but the practice I did do helps some with my overall confidence at least.
All right, let me push back a little here and play devil's advocate. Because it's not all perfect, right? What are the downsides of using AI for language learning?
Oh, for sure. There's definitely stuff AI can't do as well as humans. First of all, it's not human, obviously. So things like cultural context, understanding the subtle social rules of a conversation, the unwritten expectations that native speakers just know automatically, that's harder for AI to grasp fully.
Like knowing when it's okay to be super casual and use slang versus when you should be more formal and professional? The unwritten social rules that nobody explicitly teaches you?
Exactly. A human from Canada would know that we're pretty casual and friendly in most everyday situations, but you still hold the door for people and say sorry even when it's not your fault. An AI might not pick up on all those little cultural things that make you sound natural.
And there's regional variation to think about too. Canadian English is different from American English in some ways, which is different from British or Australian English. Like we say a lot and about sounds different, and Americans always make fun of us for it.
True, eh? You can ask the AI about regional differences and it'll explain them, but it's not the same as learning from someone who actually lives it every day and uses those expressions naturally.
What about emotional support? Like when you're really frustrated with your progress, feeling like you'll never get it right, and you just need someone to say, hey, learning a language is genuinely hard, you're doing awesome, hang in there.
AI can say those words, but does it hit the same as when a real person says them and means them? Probably not, honestly. There's something about genuine human encouragement and connection that feels more real and meaningful.
And the randomness and unpredictability of real conversation. Humans go off on tangents naturally, bring up unexpected topics, have inside jokes, and shared references. AI can feel predictable sometimes, like you can kind of guess where it's going.
That's fair criticism. Real conversations have that spontaneous energy that's tough to replicate perfectly.
So, what's the verdict then? Traditional methods are bad, AI is good? Or the other way around completely?
Neither extreme, honestly. I think the smart move is using both together, a blended approach that takes the best of each method.
What does that look like in practice for someone who wants to improve their English? Like if I decided I wanted to learn Portuguese starting tomorrow, what would you suggest as a game plan?
Maybe you take a Portuguese class once a week for that structure and human connection that's hard to replace. Having a teacher guide you through the grammar systematically, having classmates to practice with and commiserate with when things get tough. But between classes, you chat with an AI to practice what you've learned, ask questions you were too shy to ask in class with everyone watching, get more examples of confusing stuff.
The class gives you the foundation and the human element and accountability. The AI gives you unlimited extra practice whenever you want it.
And maybe you do a language exchange sometimes for that real human conversation experience with a native speaker. But you're not depending on it as your only source of practice because that's too unpredictable and hard to schedule.
Using each method for what it does best, not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly right. Classes for guidance and motivation and community, AI for patient, unlimited practice, real conversations with humans for authentic experience and cultural learning.
I want to talk about something you mentioned earlier, the stress-free aspect of modern language learning approaches, because I think that's really important and people don't talk about it nearly enough.
Oh, totally. It's super crucial. Language learning can be so stressful for people. The fear of making mistakes in front of others, the frustration when you can't express yourself the way you want in the moment, the embarrassment of not understanding something that seems simple to everyone else around you.
And all that stress and anxiety literally makes it harder to learn, like physically harder. Your brain shuts down the learning centers when you're stressed out. So finding ways to learn that don't feel like torture is actually really important for making real progress.
This is where some of the modern techniques and approaches really shine. Have you heard of micro practice as a concept?
Is that the tiny burst thing? Doing little bits of practice throughout the day instead of one big overwhelming study session?
Yeah, exactly that. Instead of sitting down for an hour of intense focused study, which can feel really overwhelming and make you want to procrastinate forever, you do little 5-minute chunks of practice throughout your day whenever you have a spare moment. Learn a few new words while waiting for your coffee at Tim's. Listen to a short clip of an English podcast on your commute. Send a quick text to someone in English during your lunch break.
That feels way more doable psychologically. Anyone can find 5 minutes here and there, even on crazy busy days when you feel like you have no time for anything.
And it adds up super fast when you're consistent about it. 5 minutes, 5 times a day is 25 minutes of solid practice. Do that consistently every single day, and you're making real, measurable progress without ever feeling overwhelmed or burned out.
Consistency is key, right? A little every day beats a lot once a week, even if the total hours are pretty much the same.
Definitely. Your brain needs that regular repeated exposure to retain stuff properly and build those neural pathways. If you only study once a week, you spend half the time just trying to remember what you learned before instead of building on it.
What about immersion as an approach? That's always been seen as the gold standard for language learning, right? Moving to an English-speaking country, being completely surrounded by the language all day, every day?
Super powerful. For sure, probably the most effective approach if you can swing it. When you have to use English just to buy groceries or ask for directions or understand your landlord, you learn fast because you literally don't have a choice.
But not everyone can just move to another country for language learning purposes. Most people have jobs they can't leave. Families, mortgages, all kinds of practical life stuff tying them down.
Right. But you can create mini immersion experiences at home wherever you are in the world. Change your phone settings to English so you're constantly seeing the language everywhere. Watch shows in English with English subtitles, not subtitles in your native language. That's important because reading in your own language actually stops you from really listening to and processing the English.
I did that with a show I'd already seen in English before, watched it again, really focusing on the language so I could pay attention to how they say things rather than following the plot, which I already knew.
Smart strategy. Because you already know what's happening in the story, you can really focus on how they express things, what specific phrases and expressions they use naturally.
And podcasts too, obviously. Like this one, hopefully, just having English voices in your ears regularly helps your brain adjust to the sounds and rhythm of the language.
It really does help a ton. Your ear gets used to the rhythm and the intonation patterns, even if you're not actively studying or focusing super hard on understanding every word.
Okay, practical advice time. If someone's listening right now and wants to try AI for their language learning starting today, what should they do step by step?
Start simple. Don't overthink it or make it complicated. Just have a conversation about whatever. Tell the AI about your day, what happened at work or school. Ask it questions about something you're genuinely interested in. See where the conversation goes naturally.
And if they want specific feedback on their mistakes as they go,
Ask for it specifically at the start of your conversation. Say, I want to practice my English. Please correct my mistakes and explain why they're wrong so I can learn. The AI will follow those instructions consistently.
can you give a concrete example of what that interaction might look like?
Sure thing. So say you write, yesterday I go to store and buyed some milk because we ran out. The AI might respond something like, a couple of quick corrections here. It should be, I went to the store, using the past tense went, and bought instead of buyed, because buy has an irregular past form that doesn't follow the normal ed pattern. So the correct sentence is, yesterday I went to the store and bought some milk.
It doesn't just say wrong, it explains the actual rule behind the correction so you understand why. That's super helpful for actually learning.
And you can follow up with more questions to really understand it. Ask, what are other common irregular verbs like that? And get a whole list with examples you can study.
What about pronunciation and speaking skills? Can AI help with those too?
Some AI tools definitely can. ChatGPT has a voice mode now where you can actually speak to it out loud and have real back and forth conversations. It responds pretty much instantly, which feels really natural and conversational.
That's pretty amazing when you really stop and think about it. Real-time conversation practice with feedback anytime you want, day or night, basically free. 20 years ago, this would have been total science fiction, like something from a movie.
Right? When I was in school, we had language labs with tape recorders that barely worked half the time. Now you can have a sophisticated conversation with an AI from your phone while you're on the bus going to work.
Let me share a quick story that's related to this. My neighbor's kid is in high school right now, learning English as a second language. He uses Claude to help with his English essays for school.
Oh, cool. How does that process work for him?
He writes a draft of his essay himself first, then pastes it into Claude and asks for detailed feedback. Not asking it to rewrite the whole thing for him, that would be cheating, but to point out where he could improve things, suggest better vocabulary choices, catch grammar issues he might have missed.
That's perfect use of the technology, honestly. You're still doing the hard work yourself and learning through the writing process, but you've got this expert helper checking your progress and pointing out blind spots.
And he said the feedback is incredibly detailed and specific. Like, this paragraph would flow better if you reorganize these sentences this way, or this word is technically correct but pretty formal for this context. Try this more casual alternative.
Getting that level of detailed, personalized feedback from a human tutor would cost a lot of money, and you'd have to schedule around their availability and maybe drive somewhere to meet them.
He can do it at midnight if that's when he's finally working on his homework after procrastinating all day. No scheduling hassle, no waiting around for an appointment.
Important point though, he's still writing the essays himself and doing the actual learning. The AI is a tool to help him improve, not a replacement for putting in the work and effort.
Right. If you just have AI write everything for you, you're not learning anything at all. You're just cheating yourself out of the education. The whole point is to use it to support and accelerate your own learning journey, not skip the learning completely.
That's such an important distinction that gets lost sometimes in the conversation about AI and education. Some people worry AI will make everyone lazy, that nobody will bother learning languages properly because they can just use translation apps for everything.
I get that worry. It's a valid concern, but I don't think that's how most people actually use these tools in practice. People who want to learn a language want to actually learn it for real. They want to have conversations without needing an app in the middle, understand movies without reading subtitles.
It's like saying calculators meant nobody would learn math anymore. But we still teach math because understanding how numbers work is valuable in itself, even when you have a calculator for the complicated calculations.
Good analogy. The tool doesn't replace the underlying knowledge and skills. It helps you build them more efficiently.
Let's do a quick vocab recap for our listeners. We've used a bunch of good expressions today that are worth highlighting.
Go for it. What do we got?
Get the hang of means to understand how to do something through practice until it becomes natural. I finally got the hang of using articles correctly after lots of practice.
Wrap your head around is similar in meaning. To understand something complicated or confusing. I couldn't wrap my head around the grammar at first, but now it makes sense.
At your own pace means at the speed that works best for you without outside pressure. Self-study lets you learn at your own pace without feeling rushed.
Trial and error means learning by trying stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't. I figured out a lot of the rules through trial and error.
It clicked means you suddenly understood something that was confusing you. I kept struggling with that concept, and then one day it just clicked.
Pick up on means to notice something, often gradually over time. I started to pick up on the different regional accents after watching lots of shows.
Brush up on means to review and improve something you already know but might be rusty at. I need to brush up on my vocabulary before my trip.
Dive into means to start exploring something with enthusiasm and energy. Let's dive into the next chapter while we're motivated.
We also used figure out, which means to solve or understand something through thinking about it. I couldn't figure out why my sentence sounded wrong. And zone out, which means to stop paying attention, like your mind drifts away.
Hang in there means to persevere and keep trying even when things are tough. Learning a language is hard, but hang in there. And no big deal means something isn't important or serious. Making mistakes is no big deal. That's how you learn.
Workout can mean to exercise, but also to figure out or solve something. I finally worked out why I was making that mistake. And kind of and pretty much are casual ways to say somewhat or almost. Super common in everyday speech.
All super useful everyday expressions you'll hear constantly in natural conversation. They're the kind of phrases that make you sound natural instead of like you're reading from a textbook.
Ha, we should probably start wrapping up soon. We've been talking forever and my hot chocolate is long gone.
Time flies when you're having a good conversation. Quick recap for everyone who's been listening.
Traditional methods, like classrooms, language exchange programs, and self-study all have their place and real value. They give you structure, human connection, accountability, and solid foundations that are hard to replace.
Modern AI tools like ChatGPT and Claude add something genuinely new and valuable to the mix. Patient practice partners who never judge you, instant feedback when you make mistakes, personalized learning tailored to your interests and level, available anytime, day or night.
The best approach for most people is probably blended, using both together. Use traditional methods for the human elements and structure and motivation. Use AI for extra unlimited practice and getting questions answered without embarrassment.
Remember, little and often beats occasional marathon study sessions. 5 minutes of practice a day really does add up over time to major improvement.
Find what works for you as an individual, because everyone learns differently. Some people need structured classes with a teacher. Some love apps and AI. Some learn best through conversation and immersion. Experiment and figure out what clicks for you personally.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's literally how everyone learns. It's no big deal, just part of the process.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on Cozy English and spending your time with us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about next time. We love hearing from listeners.
And if you try using AI for your language learning, tell us how it goes. We'd love to hear what works for you.
Take care, happy learning, and remember it's supposed to be fun and enjoyable, not torture.
Bye everyone. Stay cozy and keep practicing.
See you next time.